Hello, and welcome to day 3 of Festival of the Future. The Festival of the Future is a week-long event showcasing and celebrating the innovation taking place here in Dorset. All week long, we're travelling around our beautiful county and showcasing the amazing things that are happening through these live streams. I'm Dr. Deborah Smart, Dorset Council's Corporate Director for Digital and Change. And with me I have Councillor Jill Haynes, who's the Cabinet Member Lead for Customer and Community Services. Welcome, Jill.
Thanks very much, Deb. It's wonderful to be here. What a glorious day in Lyme Regis. We're putting our focus today on tourism. It's really important for the Dorset economy, and we have thousands of visitors who come to us every year, particularly down to the Jurassic Coast. We need to keep them safe, and we need to keep an eye on our coastal communities as well. So we'll be finding out a bit more about how the digital experience can help them.
We've got some great speakers lined up for us this morning, telling us a bit more about our coast and some of the work that's going on here, making it a great place to live, work and visit. We're going to start with 5G and how that's powering the visitor coastal experience. I've got Gary Littledyke with me here. Welcome, Gary. Did you manage to get here okay?
Morning, Debs. I did. I'm very lucky in that I live just around the corner in beautiful Lyme Regis, so lucky me.
That's excellent. So over to you, Gary, to hear about what we've been doing with 5G on the coast. Thank you.
Debs. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So my name is Gary Littledyke. I'm a project manager on the 5G Rural Dorset project. So 5G Rural Dorset is a Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport rural testbed for 5G. So what that means is we're using government funding and funding contributed by other partners in the project, a collaboration of companies, academia, and it's led by Dorset Council to look at what we can do with 5G. We're talking today specifically about tourism, but as you'll hear over the course of the Festival of the Future, we've got test beds that are also looking at smart farming and aquaculture, public safety along the coast, and various other bits and pieces. So one of the things I just wanted to touch on really is that, we face some challenges in very rural Dorset around connectivity, and we've got a number of partners that are testing out some private connectivity using 5G, as well as working with mobile network operator partner Vodafone, who are delivering some commercial connectivity. We're going to have a look now. You've been looking at some of the buoys down at Lulworth Cove, and we're actually very lucky that we've actually got some real kit here today. I'm going to now introduce you to James Thomas, who is the CEO at Jet Engineering. Morning, James. How are you?
Morning, Gary. Yeah, really good, thanks. Lovely day.
Well, it's a gorgeous day. It's always lovely in Lyme Regis. So James has travelled down this morning from Reading and brought with him a rather lovely piece of kit he's going to tell us a little bit about.
Oh, thanks for the introduction, Gary. Yeah, so I'd love to get the chance to talk to you a little bit about our product and what we're doing and some of the work we've done with the Rural Dorset team. So what we're trying to enable is a safety, security and environmentally friendly use cases at sea. So one of the really nice things with that is we've got a nice bit of poster of what we're doing. One of them is the renewables piece, to enable communication out to the renewables whilst you're building those infrastructural pieces. Sea safety, making the beaches and our coastline safer for tourists, and also for those that use the sea regularly, professional mariners. Autonomous platforms, enabling them. So at the moment, there's a lot of regulations around when you can and when you can't use autonomous platforms at sea. We want to provide the connectivity backbone that enables those to succeed. Drones, enabling that range further offshore. Sonar, we can look at some of the more security-focused use cases where we can start to understand what's actually operating in our English Channel. And then the smart ports piece and the aquaculture piece, which ties back into sort of shipping and making sure that shipping has a way of achieving some of those ambitions it's got to reach net zero, and the aquaculture piece being so key in this region, being such a high potential opportunity.
Brilliant, thanks, James. And when the visitors were looking at the video that was running while I was talking earlier, they will have seen some of the digital signage that we've deployed. And I think your boy is providing the feeds into those signs to give us some information. What kind of information are we displaying on the signs from your boy, James?
So on this buoy here, we have a weather station. The weather station, we've got some sea state monitoring capabilities inside, and we've got 5G endpoint connectivity. So this is one of our small buoys. This is providing that data back over the 5G network, the standalone 5G network as well, right back into those signs where we're displaying that for the public so they can start to understand what's actually happening at sea a little bit.
And we've been working with various supporting organisations as well, like the RNLI, so that the people that are visiting our lovely coastline are getting information about sea state so we can help to keep them safe while they're visiting. So, James, thanks ever so much. I think we're going to catch up again a bit later for some questions, but thanks for now. Thanks for joining us. So we're going to pop over now and you're going to have a look at a video from Lulworth Cove, a little bit of a teaser for a longer video that's going to go live at 12 o'clock, which is a 360-degree experience that uses the 5G network we've deployed at Lulworth.
Hello and welcome to a virtual tour of Lulworth Cove and the surrounding area. I'm Derek, I'm one of the rangers that work here at Lulworth. It's a little bit of a windy day, so hopefully you can hear me okay. But we're just here outside the visitor centre, as you can probably see, and we're going to go for about a 10-minute walk to see some of the sights of the area, so come on this way. At the top, there's not too many people around today, which is quite a good thing. Looks like a few climbers scoping out the area down there. But here we have Stairhole. Just one of the most amazing scenes and sights here at Lulworth. We have a succession of pieces of coastal erosion where in the middle you can see where a cave is turning into an arch. On the left hand side a complete arch where the waves have crashed through, eroded the area from about 10,000 years ago. And then on the right hand side you can see a big gap in the coastline there, a little stump of rock. So this is the perfect place to see those phases of coastal erosion here. But one of the best spots or best things to see is on the far left. This is called the Gulf, where different layers of rock have been laid on top of each other, and over the years they've been pushed and twisted and crumpled up through tectonic activity to form this big sweep of rock. And what we see is there's limestone within there. Now they represent different chapters of the Earth's history, going back from the Jurassic time period, which is some of the furthest rocks out towards the sea, to the Cretaceous time period. And for anyone who really loves dinosaurs or are a big dinosaur enthusiast when they're a child, or maybe still are now, you can see different fossil records with each one of those layers, really telling the story of this coastline. Okay, let's carry on. I'm sure some people are aware that this coastline at Lulworth is part of a much more famous, much wider coast that stretches for 95 miles, and that is called the Jurassic Coast. It's more of a nickname really, because the official title of it is the Dorset and East Devon Coast. That's the inscription that's been made with the UNESCO World Heritage listing, but Jurassic Coast is a very good marketing tool to get people down here thinking about dinosaurs and thinking about fossils they might be able to find along this coast. So Lulworth is probably the best place to come and find fossils. We don't really have the right conditions, the rate of erosion, or the right type of rocks to have really prolific fossils kind of coming down on the beach. Places like Charmouth, places like Kimmeridge, Osmington, Lyme Regis, very famous, are great places to go fossil hunting. Here is our geology that really brings people to the area. So lots of different rock types from different time periods that really shape our coastline. And as we come up over the brow of the hill here, we'll start being able to see just a little bit higher, so we get the full view at the top viewpoint, and we'll see into Weymouth Bay. On the way past, we'll just have a quick look at this stone. This is the UNESCO Heritage Stone. It talks about the area being part of a World Heritage Site, and the really unique thing we have here is that the Jurassic Coast is not only a natural World Heritage Site, but it's England's first and only natural World Heritage Site. There is, however, another World Heritage Site that's a natural one in the UK, and that's the Giant's Causeway up in Northern Ireland. But here we have this amazing area that incorporates 185 million years of the Earth's history. So really important to protect, which means this whole area has legal protection to make sure that nothing inhibits the fossils that come out of the cliff. So unlike other World Heritage Sites that are in the country, so like Stonehenge or the Tower of London, have this obviously protection to make sure that those places don't get destroyed. But our World Heritage Site is quite interesting because we want our World Heritage Site to constantly be destroyed and broken down, because the more it gets destroyed and broken down, the more fossils come out of the cliffs. Okay, now looking over Weymouth Bay, we can see the Isle of Portland on the horizon. It's an amazing place where it's built out of really strong Portland limestone, which is also the rock that we see at the front of Steer Hole that we look down into now. So really resistant against the sea's forces, and protects some of the softer rocks that we have in behind there, which you can see on the far side of Steer Hole. Portland, just out of interest, is where they quarry the Portland.
And I hope you enjoyed that little teaser. I'll be giving out the details of how to see the full 360-degree video at the end of today's session. We can now take some questions from the audience. To help us do that, we've got the amazing Catchbox, which has been dressed up in our true festival garb, lent to us by a Latvian company. They want it back, so let's make sure we don't throw it into the sea. Anybody okay? So, do we have any questions from the audience?
We've got some questions on Slido. We ready for some questions?
Yes, we're ready for some questions from Slido.
Okay, so this one is, do you foresee in the future the opportunity for this technology to be utilised by professional mariners?
Should I take that one?
Yes, please, James.
So absolutely, what we're trying to do is set the ball in motion for the pilot study that enables connectivity at sea to exist. Currently, there's a crying out need for it for a lot of the industry that exists. They have a very, very slow data bandwidth, and what we'd love to enable is shipping to have access to that across multiple different sectors. So thank you.
Any more questions from Slido?
Yeah, we've got one more. What is the battery capacity in terms of time between human intervention?
Do you want me to take that one as well?
I think so, James, yeah.
I mean, as a technical question, I can take that one. It's really interesting, actually. One of the things we've got as a challenge is about the power draw. And on the small boy that I've got here, that's got about 100 watts of solar and about 200 amp hours of battery. That gives us around about a continuous year. Now, we're looking at whether this would operate continuously for 10 years or whether we're going to need to service the batteries during that period. But we're expecting all year round operation. In fact, our first one that's on trial has been operating continuously for 4 months since it first went in the water. So that's been some fantastic news.
Great. And of course, battery technology is improving all the time, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things we're looking at is when we enable full network communications, we're going to move towards a kilowatt. That's going to need some larger power systems. But with the technology moving forward and the innovation in Dorset, it's been really useful.
Excellent. Do we have any questions from the audience at all?
Yeah, thank you, guys. James, considering the future, what do you think the most impactful application of a 5G network at sea could be?
I think one of the most important things for this is going to be looking at the renewable sectors. So all the installation phases of that renewable sector, they have no comms currently. And when we think about the effect of moving all those wind turbines to the seabed where they're being positioned, we have a carbon cost of that. And when we talk about the carbon cost of that, it's in the billions to achieve net zero. And when we look at what we can achieve by giving them an efficiency on that, even 5% would be about £200 million of carbon saving per year for the economy. So when we consider the impact we could have, I think that's where I see the most impact in the short term, certainly.
That's great. And I think we've got another question coming in through Slido.
Yes, we've got one more. What's next for 5G at the coast?
What next for 5G at the coast? Gary, do you want to start with that one? I think this is one we can all answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, one of the great things of being involved in the project in nearly 2 years now is seeing the potential for 5G. We really are, to some extent, only limited by our imagination. I think this is a proof of concept project. We're working with DCMS, and there are a number across the country. The thing about 5G is that the mobile operators are not going to roll out the infrastructure unless they can see a return on their investment. And what we're helping to do is to highlight what we call stackable use cases. So there's no one silver bullet. There's no one use case for 5G that's going to fund it. But if you build one on the other, some of them will be around smart farming, some will be around maritime safety, some will be about landslip protection, all of those good things. You can get to the point, the tipping point, if you like, where it's all funded. So I think there's a great future for 5G. We just need to believe in it and let's see what happens.
And James, what about you? What do you see as the future for 5G here in Dorset?
Certainly in Dorset, I think there's some really good news stories that are likely to come out. It's going to be the job creation based around the work that's been carried out by Gary and the Dorset Council team. They've been fantastic at engaging SMEs and enabling us to grow. I think there's going to be a lot of good use cases coming around actually under cliff erosion. There's a lot of other parties in this consortium that have delivered a lot of really useful work. And we need to see that the full picture here is about stacking all of those things together. I'm personally very vested in extending that offshore further, but I do think, though, the sort of the coastal piece in that sort of littoral zone is really important for us to start to see how we can help benefit public as a whole.
And Jill, we've obviously had fantastic support from the Cabinet to take this project forward. From a political perspective, how do you see 5G going in Dorset?
Thanks, Deb. I think it's so important. We are just moving at the very beginning of this stage, and I want Dorset to be at the forefront of this, which I think we are. I think we have full support from the Cabinet moving forward, and as Gary has already said, we are only limited by our imagination as to what we can do.
Great, and I believe we've got another question from Slido. Over to Slido.
We have, it's really popular today. How does connectivity at sea help the maritime sector?
How does connectivity at sea help the maritime sector? James, do you want to take that one?
Absolutely, that's fine. So I think what we've got to look at is how we use connectivity on land. It enables efficiencies in so many different ways. We can now order food whilst we're still walking home. We can have all those different things that happen. And when we can unlock that to happen at sea, we can have all those things happen in terms of monitoring lobster pots. We can start to see where they are. We can give sailors connectivity, so we've got safer race courses. We can start to do things like enabling autonomy in short sea shipping. That's a tough one to say. But when we talk about that, we can then enable all the regional ports to start to have a bigger part to play in terms of decarbonisation.
And how would we enable all those things then here in Dorset?
I think that the starting point for that is enabling the SME culture, enabling small businesses to grow and leveraging that. I think enabling technology to develop further in the region and utilising the springboard of the good work that the 5G Rural Dorset team has created.
Brilliant, thank you, James. I believe we've got another question in the audience.
Yes, if I may. What we've heard is very optimistic, and the move towards 5G and any technology increasing progression in that is to be welcomed. How can we ensure that we get a 5G provision that is well covered across the whole area, when at the moment there are parts of Britain and around Dorset that doesn't even have 4G? So how do you ensure 5G, and how do you ensure too that with the dependency you grow on 5G, that you don't suffer failure in system that we've seen recently with other things, because so much becomes a required expectancy and dependency? How do you ensure that?
That's a great question. Gary, do you want to start with that one?
I felt perhaps that the mic might be heading my way. Thank you. Great question. So there's a couple of pieces in there. One of the key features of 5G, you're absolutely right, is that we're going to become more and more reliant on it, business critical, mission critical type solutions. But the good news is that 5G is designed to deliver that kind of connectivity. We shouldn't really set any false expectations, right? We need to expect that 5G is not going to be rolled out widely across Dorset in the next few years. Ultimately, it's going to take government intervention and or investment by the mobile operators in order to make that happen. And it's not up to us to force that to happen. So what we can do is start to highlight the opportunity 5G technology brings, the things you can do with it. So examples around smart farming, making farming more effective, more efficient, reducing costs, will start to free up budget to invest in rolling out the technology. Another example of that would be health and social care. And we've got an older than average population across Dorset compared to the rest of the UK. We've got a large chunk of the budget being spent by Dorset Council on health and social care. So there's an opportunity there for us to grasp where we can use that technology to help people stay at home safely for longer. And all of these things are only possible with lots of parties being involved and driving it forward. I think there's a follow-on question there, is there?
Yeah, there is. The other thing is, I'm Mayor of Lyme Regis and I represent a resident population. And of course, all these systems that develop put an increasing weight on household and bills and costs for the household. So what kind of burden does that grow in terms of monthly costs on a household, and how much kit reliance does it have on these households having it in place?
So I take it you want me to answer that one, Deb?
Carry on, Gary.
So my expectation is that actually from a householder point of view, that there won't be an additional cost. And the mobile operators might not thank me for saying this, but I can see the potential because 5G is going to deliver better mobile connectivity to people, it may be that some people won't necessarily need a fixed broadband connection at home as well as a mobile phone. The speeds and throughput we're going to see from 5G as it rolls out will be good enough for some people. So I don't personally expect there to be an increase in costs. I actually see the opportunities for people to reduce costs at home. So we've seen smart meters being rolled out in the past. I think that actually what we should be aiming for is to reduce costs, help with carbon efficiencies, and actually drive forward in a way that benefits everybody. And if we all have that objective, I think that we can make this work. I think there's another question.
I think the Mayor's coming back with another question.
Just to follow on from that then, the point I'd like to do as a supplementary then is coming back to households, it requires the average householder to be up with technology. How do you ensure that they grow their awareness of that technology and make sure they have the most up-to-date versions and kit?
So it's a shame I haven't got one of my colleagues from the digital inclusion team on the panel actually, but I know that we've got a team in Dorset Council. We've got lots of digital champions whose role it is to help train and inform people about what's possible. I would hope that 5G technology, a 5G phone would be as easy to use, if not easier, than a 3G or 4G phone. It's really just about the technology that's used to connect it. And I think, Jill, you wanted to add to that?
Yes, I do. Thanks. Before I had this portfolio, I had the portfolio for adult social care. And you will be amazed how quickly people can pick up and use that sort of equipment, particularly things like iPads. And you'll find that 3-year-old children are very capable of using a phone and an iPad with a little bit of tuition, and it is only a little bit of tuition. Most older people are able to do that, and it connects them in a way that is just not possible by us taking them to a day centre or us taking or waiting for them to have visitors come to them. It allows them to actually speak to people in real time. It's really, really important. And they're finding it easy, particularly during the lockdown when a lot of people were very vulnerable and isolating. We found how quickly they were able to use it. So I don't think that's a particular issue.
Thanks, Jill. And I'd just like to say that it's part of the Dorset Council's digital strategy. We have got a huge strand of that about digital skills and inclusion, as Gary talked about. We've got the volunteer digital champions who are now back in the libraries. They obviously, in COVID, they pivoted to run the great, fantastic digital hotline. And that was really to help people who did struggle, either to get online or to afford equipment and data and technology. And those people are there in Dorset, in the libraries, waiting to help people to get online and to not see some of that technology as a challenge, to get some peer support and to enable all our residents in Dorset to get online, even if they do struggle. I think we've still got another question from the audience. Over to the audience.
Yes, hello. Gary, I heard you on the radio this morning. You were talking about cliff monitoring. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that particular project.
Yeah, thanks, Penny. One of the elements of the project, we're working with British Geological Survey and Bournemouth University using Vodafone NB-IoT technology, which is a 5G technology that allows many, many devices to collect data and pass them back through the cloud, through the network, for analysis. So BGS traditionally would have drilled big holes in the side of cliffs to monitor the water content and the general environment, which might give an indication when there was going to be a landfall. Clearly, a landfall can be awful. It can lead to the loss of life. So anything we can do to understand when that might be about to happen will be useful. So working with Vodafone, BGS and Bournemouth University, we're using sensors that use the 5G technology to constantly monitor and send back information about the environment. That might be temperature, it might be the humidity, the water content. This is then all analysed using artificial intelligence techniques that are being developed, using algorithms that are being checked, compared with historical data that led up to previous landslips. And the hope is that, we don't know yet, it's early on in the project, but the hope is we might be able to develop some kind of early warning system that would give us advance notice when there was likely to be the kind of environment that might lead to a landslip. So it's another exciting part of what we're doing in Dorset, Penny. So great question and thanks for it.
Well, I think that's all the time we've got for questions for now. And sadly, Jill has to leave us now as well. So thank you very much, Jill, for spending time with us this morning and for your great introduction and input into the session. We're now going to go over to the Eden project to see how they're using 5G technology to enrich their visitor experience. We humans see our environment in a very different way to other creatures. Bats, bees and mosquitoes, for example, are tuned in to very different sights and sounds. We're going to find out how visitors can see what they see using this technology, which sits behind the experience. And here's Darren Hoare with all the details.
Hi everyone, thanks very much for having the Eden Universe at your festival. I'd like to introduce, my name's Darren Hoare, I'm the project lead of the Eden Universe. And on the call, we also have Martin Jowers from Marshmallow Laser Feast and Henry Stewart from Meta Cameras. So I just want to introduce a little bit about what we are, and we've got a couple of boring slides and then we'll get into the interesting videos that Molly and Henry will be able to share with you. So the main thing we want to look at is, and the overarching objective of our project is, can immersive technology help us enhance customer experience? So this project is happening at the Eden Project, and for those of you that don't know what we are, who we are, we're an educational charity and social enterprise based in Cornwall, in the UK. It's a global mission to create a movement that builds relationships between people and the natural world, which you'll see from our content shortly that we're really striving to do so. And the Eden Project effectively was launched 20 years ago, and it's a China clay pit that was transformed into this living theatre of plants and people. And now 20 years later, we're welcoming over 1 million people a year through the doors. They experience our biomes, our gardens, our storytellers, our art, our theatre, our concerts, our restaurants and our educational offerings. And this was really the base for us to be able to launch the Eden Universe project. So here it is. So that then leads us to the questions, what is the Eden Universe? So the Eden Universe is a DCMS, Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport 5G testbed. There's 4 partners working with us as the Eden Project. There's AQL, our comms partner, that's installing our 5G network. There's Marshmallow Laser Feast and Meta, both online with us today. And the actual product is broken down simply into 4 main exemplars or parts of the project. So we're putting together a customer experience element of it, a health and well-being element, an educational element, and an arts and culture element. We're also developing an Internet of Things that will help with all these exemplars and our online operations. And they all culminate into a virtual tour, which is going to be known as the Eden Universe platform. So then the main question is, and the exciting part and why we're here today and what we want to show you is, what technology are we using? What is it that these very talented people that are on the call today are going to show you as to what we're using and then how we're going to use it. So this is the platform that we've got. Everything will sit on this platform. As I said, it's a virtual tour. We've got an overview of Eden. We'll be curating an invisible rainforest experience, a virtual nature tour, and then a live Eden element to it. And without further ado, I'll now pass over to Henry, who will be able to show you the exciting developments that they have with the cameras.
I should just explain that the virtual tour itself is different to most normal virtual tours in a couple of key ways, but one of the main ones is the fact it's got these live 360 feeds in there, because usually with virtual tours it's individual still photos or pre-recorded 360-degree videos. But in this case, people are going to be able to come to the Eden Universe site, and they're going to be able to tap into live 360 cameras and not only just have a look around them at what's happening in Eden at that particular moment, but there might also be live presentations going on, or they'll be able to look at some of the cameras which have live data and information overlaid on them, thanks to Marshmallow Laserfeast and Eden's live data streams. So it's quite an exciting and quite an innovative virtual tour platform in itself. And that's before we even get into the technology of what we've installed in there. So what you should be able to see now, I think it's playing. Darren, if you start moving it around, you might see the logo somewhere. Okay, it's coming through now. It's a slightly slow frame rate on the recording. So normally when you look at this, it should be really nice and smooth. This first view you're looking at is what we call the lookout camera. And this is quite a special camera for us because it's suspended below this incredible platform which sits at the zenith of the rainforest biome. And the camera is dangling out from below it. And this is going to be our highest resolution camera in there. It's going to be it's actually going to be streaming at 8K once we've got everything online and working fully. And that's going to be overlaid with data provided by Eden and by MLF. This camera we're looking at now is the Rainforest Market. This is one of our Meta 2 cameras, which is our more standard camera that's going in there. And each of these cameras has to be really carefully sealed and weatherproofed, not only to avoid issues from condensation and raindrops, or not raindrops, but water that drops off the ceiling of the biome, but also for these ants, these tiny little ants that are everywhere at Eden, and to stop them from getting inside the cameras. This view here is what we call it's the Southeast Asia Garden. And as you see with all these cameras, when you look down or when you look up, when you look all around, there's no tripods, there's no wires, there's no what we call camera chutney, anywhere lying around. It's all hidden, and it's very carefully hidden within the seams between the lenses, because each of these cameras is made up of two sets of lenses. And so where those lenses overlap, we call it the stitch line, and we hide everything in those lines. This now is the Mediterranean biome camera. This camera is actually hanging about 3 meters below these steps again that go up to the top of the biome there, and it's just dangling, and you can see how far below it you are. One of the problems that this camera has highlighted for us is that in this case a spider has died on one of the lenses, and we need to somehow get access to it, and that's not at all easy. So we've got to work with the Eden Ropes team and try and find a way to figure out how we can constantly clean these lenses. This camera, if you turn around behind you, Darren, it's the lily pond camera. So it's one of the more famous areas in Eden where the waterfall runs down into this beautiful lily pond. And actually in the background of this shot, you can just about make out a little cable running horizontally through the shot. And that's actually the cables that we've laid for our horizontal camera. And that's a camera that's going to be moving through that area up through the rainforest. And it's being developed at the moment. We're in R&D with that. This, though, is probably our favorite of all the cameras and also the most challenging. It's the vertical camera. And this one is slowly rising up, and I should say quite smoothly rising up normally. At the moment, again, it's very jumpy in this recording, so I can't wait to share it properly with you. But it's going to rise up from the roots of one of the tallest and most beautiful trees in Eden, up past its canopy and over the top. And as it does that, it's going to have incredible graphics, really beautiful stuff overlaid by Marshmallow Laserfeast as part of one of the projects they're doing in this Eden Universe project. So I'll hand over now to Mully from Marshmallow Laserfeast, who can tell you a bit about what they're doing.
So we are Marshmallow Laserfeast. We're an experiential design studio working at the intersection of art, science and technology. And we've got a passion as a studio for revealing invisible worlds and making the invisible visible using technology. We've got experiences we've designed all over the world using similar technologies to the project that you're about to see. So with the 360 footage that we've got from Metacamera, what we're doing is overlaying augmented reality information and data streams to convey what is going on inside plants. Eden have obviously got this incredibly magical, beautiful rainforest, but often you'll hear children coming in and saying, "It's boring, nothing's happening, it's nothing going on," which is obviously not true, but you can see why children say it. So what we're trying to do is use technology to excite people and show them that these living creatures are doing lots of things that we just aren't aware of ourselves. So this is a shot coming from the vertical camera, which Henry just mentioned. So you can see that we've been working on overlaying our augmented reality information on top of it. So this is what you're seeing here is the xylem and phloem within the tree and the water moving up. This will be overlaid on top of the live stream online so that visitors on the online experience can come and look at the camera and see these informations. There'll be a voiceover playing at the same time. But what's really exciting for us about this project is that we were not only delivering these online overlays, we're actually building an entire system on site so that selected groups for this test and trial period of the project can come along. They'll be given an iPad, and we're actually going to have them walk around this area of the tree, actually the other side of the tree that you just see here, over here, and they'll be able to follow and see in real time inside the tree, under the soil, see the roots, see the water being drawn up by the roots, and have a voiceover that's explaining what's going on, to just give that insight and extra depth that there is a huge amount of life and lots of exchanges of chemicals and interesting things going on that we don't know about. We're also using the iPad in another area of the biome to show the sensory perception of different creatures. So we're, based on a lot of scientific research, creating augmented reality lenses with iPads so that you can see what the perspective of a bat, a bee, or a mosquito might look like as a human. So you'll be able to walk around a garden, and as you walk through different portals, see the different visual effects on the iPad screen. So it's a super exciting project. We're really, really stoked to get down and start installing it very soon.
Thanks for that, Molly.
No problem.
So yeah, that's the overview of our project. That's what we're doing. Eden is extremely excited about all the experiences that are bringing. Not only the additional enhanced on-site experience, but being able to take Eden then out into the world. Obviously with COVID, things have changed. Not everyone can travel. People are a bit more nervous about leaving the home. And obviously Cornwall is a long way away from everything. So this project gives us a chance to take Eden out to the world, show people what we do, educate people on our mission. And obviously without 5G, we wouldn't be able to do this. So yeah, that is the Eden universe. Thank you everyone for listening to us today.
Well, that was amazing. I especially liked the bit about having to make sure the ants didn't crawl into the cameras. James, is that the sort of thing that you've had to think about with the boy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have the maintenance, we have the servicing, and we have to think about how this interacts with the local environment. I think one of the things we're going to look at is biofouling and what's going to happen. We're going to get muscle growth on the boys. And one of the nice things coming out the projects and the test beds and trials has given us the opportunity as a startup to understand those things and learn quite a lot about it. The interesting thing with the biofouling piece is there's some really interesting use cases in aquaculture. In aquaculture, it's all about trying to create that biofouling, you know, the seaweed growth, the mussels, and all that sort of growth. So that's one of the other projects we're working on and trying to help provide a solution to underwater camera management. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So Slido's open, so if you want to ask us any questions, please feel free to put them in through Slido. And we've seen a lot now today, this morning, about how 5G is being used to enhance the visitor experience, particularly in Eden project and stuff we're doing here in Dorset. So what does this mean for tourism in Dorset? So I'll ask your questions through Slido. We're going to have a bit of a chat about what that means for us in Dorset here using 5G. So Gary, what do you think 5G can do for tourism in Dorset?
So, look, you know, the 2 years now nearly I've been working on the project, Debs, I've seen huge opportunity. We are literally just scratching the surface of what's possible. So I think there's a huge opportunity. We saw, nobody else I don't think has referred to COVID yet, but back in one of the lockdowns, we saw just after a lockdown a whole host of people rushing to Dorset to go to the seaside, having been locked up for months. And of course that meant, some people decided it was a good idea to jump off the top of Durdle Door into the sea, and the emergency response to that was challenging. I think 5G brings us the opportunity to gather a lot of data and understand what's happening, but more importantly maybe what's about to happen. So we might be able to start to empty bins when they're getting full, instead of going and visiting a bin to see if it's empty. And you can apply that to so many things. I was chatting to Councillor Haynes off camera a short while ago. She was saying that her son's working on a project where they're monitoring the health of railway tracks. You can apply this technology to so many different areas: water leakage, drains, blocked drains, small robots that can be controlled and do things. One of the projects in Dorset, whilst not specifically tourist related, is looking at how you can look after crops using drones to spray them appropriately, which means less chemicals go into the watercourse. But coming back to tourism, the work we've done with our project partners Accelerate and with Jet, where we're using the buoys to look at sea state, means that we can give people information so they can make better decisions. Am I going to go in the water? If you give me the information that allows me to make an intelligent decision, then I'm going to make a better decision. Historically, people have been left to some extent to make their choices with very limited input. And again, that availability of information, I've got a vision, if you like, when it comes to tourism, that would see a leap forward really in terms of what we do with things like sat-nav and mobile phone data. So imagine if you were going to get in your car and you put in your sat-nav along with thousands of other people across the country where you're going, and your sat-nav was able to say to you, "Are you sure, Debs, that you want to go to Durdle Door? Because between you and me, there's another 3,000 people who are heading in the same direction." You could then think, maybe I'd rather go somewhere else. Tell me, Mr. Sat-nav, where would you suggest I go if I want to do X, Y, and Z? That all sounds a little bit Star Trek and a bit sci-fi, but it isn't as far away as you might think it would be.
Obviously somewhere else in Dorset is where we want to go. I just had to add that in. So there's a lot of the technology you've talked about there is about keeping people safe, I think, Gary, really. So a big connection between the cliff falls, managing rescues at sea, and also helping people to make informed decisions about whether they might go out to sea.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other thing I'd say there, Deb, sorry, was we're talking about keeping people safe. The Mayor in some of his questions earlier from Lyme Regis was asking about the digital divide and connectivity. We've seen that the MBIoT coverage we've got across Dorset is fantastic. There are certain areas in Dorset where anybody that visits, works or lives in Dorset knows that we've got some areas where it's hard to make a phone call, including maybe a 999 call. Whereas MBIoT coverage is pretty much ubiquitous. So that means that we can start to measure things and pass information about things back to people, even if there's no mobile phone signal. That's not something we've been able to do before. So again, that thing I said about only being limited by your imagination really is true.
So let's use our imagination, James. Let's imagine that we've got as much connectivity as we can need at sea, whatever that looks like. What would that do for the tourist experience in Dorset, do you think?
So I think it gives them an opportunity to stay a little bit safer. That's the primary piece. One of the things we've noted when we talk to the RNLI, it's not about trying to save lives when people have gone to sea and got themselves into trouble. It's about trying to stop them doing the stupid things in the first place. The lie-low and the offshore wind is probably a bad idea. The things that we all know are really a little bit silly because we live by the coast. But when you actually talk to people that haven't necessarily had that upbringing, that understanding, it's about the education before they go into the water. I think that's one of the things we're trying to enable with the project, and so that the tourism can stay safer. That means that we don't have to go and launch the ribs. We can put the efforts into making sure that the people don't get into trouble in the first place, because that's a much better position for us all to be in.
Absolutely. Gary, have you got a question for James?
So, James, if DCMS were very kind and gave us some more money to spend on finding out what we can do next with your boys, what would you like to do?
I think that's a great question. I think we'd like to have larger, more integrated systems so we can connect all the buoys together so we have a mesh at sea, and that's the piece we're looking to try and work out how we could fund. For us, that unlocks the the route to renewables. That unlocks a lot of the big things. At the moment, we're talking about a use case that's very discrete, a bit like monitoring a cliff, a bit like monitoring a sea station in a location. Well, actually, by providing a network that operates at sea, that makes it bigger than a single use case. That enables hundreds of things to be stacked upon there. Yeah. And for us as a business, we're about a year old, as I said earlier, I think. And having had a year of understanding and learning, we want to try and understand and learn what a floating network at sea would look like, what the power draw needs to be, how do we enable that to succeed, what use cases actually make that commercially viable. Because we can understand that, again, it was the point that was made earlier was around we don't want this to weigh on the local economy. And obviously, us as a commercial organisation want to make profit out of anything we do. Now, when we think about that, having that network has to have enough use cases stacked to make it profitable. We can talk about using it for border security, but it's still very expensive for one thing. We can talk about it for autonomy, but it's still quite expensive, which is why our construct is all around enabling so many different use cases and enabling connectivity for people that want it.
I think one of the questions that was asked earlier, following on for that, you replied with something about short shipping, and that's something that fascinates me. One of the things I've learned since moving to Dorset is that it takes twice as long to get anywhere than it does anywhere else I've ever lived or visited. And that means a couple of things. It means that if somebody needs to send an ambulance to you and you live quite remotely, some of this new technology around remote patient consultation, about being able to treat people on board an ambulance with the right equipment and getting consultations back with specialists on the go becomes so much more relevant than it is in an urban area. And that, again, the short shipping thing, if you were to drive from Lyme Regis or Dorchester to Plymouth in a HGV truck full of goods, actually you could get in a boat and set it sail about that direction. It would get there without a crew. And you need the connectivity to be able to do that. But I think, using our imagination, that takes HGVs off the road, which makes it quicker for people who are tourists to get places, and it moves all of that onto the sea that's not currently being used in a connected, safe, secure corridor.
Absolutely. The southwest of England is full of all these creeks, harbours and inlets where there's roads up and down, but they don't actually link the coast. And when we try and go between different towns and bases along the coastline, it's such a long way. To go from here to Lulworth would take hours by road if you're trundling down the country lane. But by boat, it's actually not that far. And when we think about this short sea shipping, I think that's a tough one to say. But when we think about that, it's the fact that actually it's probably far better for the environment to move goods off the road onto these discrete paths. It enables the sort of the trades to re-exist in those local economies, so we can actually build back and level up some of the coastline and the regional communities where there's clear lacks of jobs around here in the winter. In the summer, there's a lot of jobs, and everyone's aware of that. And I think actually having a technology industry that's focused around actually how do we fix our own problems is a really nice thing to take away from this. And you're very right in saying that the taking trucks off the road will make it far easier for tourists, the general public, and the people that live here to get about. It's absolutely quite essential, though. For that to exist, we need to start to have the connectivity out there to make it a safer environment if we're going to push that much more traffic offshore.
I think it's also worth mentioning, Debs, that a side benefit of the connectivity at sea is if it's just offshore, you get the benefit of the connectivity just inland as well. So much of our coastline is in a position such that it doesn't get very good connectivity from the land-based mobile phone masts because you're in a cove or you're just the other side of a cliffside or whatever. So that also helps to provide connectivity for people that live in those inlets and those coastal areas if it's configured properly.
And this was something that we spoke to the RNLI about when the minister came down, and it was really clear. They said, well, look, at the moment, the big challenge we've got is down the valley where we've got connectivity, but when we're not in the valley, when we're under the cliff edge, there's no connectivity, so it's all well and good having mobile phones, but no one can actually ring us and say they've got an issue. It'd be great if we could put your connectivity at sea and push it back in, because, I mean, here's a beautiful example with the back. We've got so many cliff edges there where there's going to be no signal on that sort of waterfront there. Once you get a mile offshore, you've still got some signal from the land, and a few miles off, it's gone again. But that little patch there has got very limited amounts of coverage, and that's the sort of use cases which really do start to make it a bit safer.
Yeah, and I know that we've been talking to Dorset Police with our friends at Accelerate, who are running that work package, and we've actually also worked with local responders locally. Accelerate provides some equipment that combines the signal from traditional mobile networks with our 5G private network, so that the emergency services can get the best connectivity they can, even if they're in an area that has poor cellular connectivity. So lots of exciting stuff potentially going forward.
Great, and I think we've got a question from the audience, have we? Can we have the question from the audience, please?
Yeah, hi James. Outside of the remit of the 5G at Sea project, does JET have any new and disruptive projects in the works that you can tell us about?
I think for us, we've got a clear focus on what we want to achieve. And for us, it's sort of the reason behind it is, for me, it's a socially good thing to do, and it's something I'm really passionate about. I think what we'd like to be able to do is offer our technology to other people. It means that actually, if we have base stations that float, we've removed that fibre, so those rural economies can have fibreless base stations, so we don't need to dig up so many roads, dig up so many fields. It's a bit slower, the internet, yeah, but it's still at least 4G and a bit more, you know? But for me, that's a really interesting use case, because it came back to the comment earlier of we don't have 5G yet, and we probably won't get that for a while, and then we've got to do all this digging up and laying all these big fibre cables. If we get the base station to hop, then we don't have to do all that digging up the road. So I more than happily want to talk to people to enable that, and I think some of the project partners we'd love to engage with on that.
Thank you, James. I think we might have another question from the audience.
Hi, I'm from Litter Free Dorset, so really interested to hear what you said about how this can help with beach management and redirecting people to very busy beaches, get away from very busy beaches, for example. We're really interested in water quality and bathing water quality, and I wonder about the potential of using this for live data on water quality and pollution and so on.
So we've actually on the buoy itself, we run a full network, so it's got the same sort of architecture in it as a car or a boat or a lot of different things. It's got 2 gigabit per second processing at the card, so we can edge process all that data. So that means in sort of more human terms, you can get as much data as you want actually off that one platform, and we can use it for as many things as we need. In terms of live data, we're not going to need sea data second by second. We're not going to need wind data second by second all year round, because there's going to be certain things that happen at certain times. And with a certain number of these things, we can actually start to build up a bigger picture. We've got so little knowledge about what's actually at sea and in the water right now, and it's most of the planet, and that's just such an amazing feat. There's a lot of people trying to understand what's happening further and further from our shore, but we still don't know the bathing water quality near shore sometimes. So yeah, absolutely really valid, and I'd love to be involved in that sort of a project. Thank you.
How long do you think it would take to sort of build up those predictive analytics that you're talking about then, James? Because we're starting from scratch, really, aren't we?
Absolutely. I think one of the nice projects that's happened was Exeter University have worked really heavily with the Rural Dorset team, and they've built up some analytics for seaweed growth. So we can put 2 cameras on a buoy underwater and look at a line of seaweed for sustainable farming. That analytics project's been about a year to build that up for that particular piece of AI that they've done. Now, when we look at that in terms of water quality, it's not going to change instantaneously. We're going to have tides that affect that. We're going to have a number of inputs to that piece, and we're going to have a number of outputs. But the project timeline on a discrete project like that isn't very long. For us, it's about building an ecosystem for change and making sure that we have enough SMEs involved in that journey, because actually I think that's where innovation teams to sit in the UK.
Excellent. Well, we've heard quite a lot about 5G Rural Dorset. Gary, do you want to just tell us a bit more about what you see as the future of that project?
Yeah, thanks, Deb. So we've got until the end of March next year. At the moment, we're fully funded up until then. We are talking to DCMS about the potential for follow-on works. We're also looking at the sustainability of the networks that we've already deployed. So the digital signage and the 5G networks that are in place at the moment, the funding for those comes to an end. The exception to that is the Vodafone infrastructure that's being built, where they are continuing to cover the ongoing cost of that beyond the end of the project. But I think this has really whetted our appetite in the digital place team at Dorset Council. We can see huge potential. We've got a fantastic team together. Dare I say, a multi-award winning team, having collected 3 awards at Connected Britain. I couldn't come today and not mention that at some point.
No, that's fine.
So we've got a fantastic relationship. Dorset is leading the country in terms of what we're doing with 5G, and DCMS have acknowledged that, and we're very well regarded. So I think we're well placed to be part of whatever comes next, and we're thinking about that now.
And so if somebody's watching today and they're thinking, oh, that's absolutely brilliant, they're going to give us all the money that we might need in 5G Rural Dorset to carry on the sort of legacy of the project and build on that legacy, what could we do? Let's use our imagination as we did earlier. Let's say, what could we do if we had that money?
So there are, as I said at the beginning, I think somewhere around there are 7 rural projects that are being run by DCMS in different parts of the country. I'd love for us to talk to those projects a bit more, find out what they've done, what's worked and what hasn't worked. and build a little portfolio of things that we've seen being successful in our areas and say, well, how can we make that work in Dorset? And equally with the things that we've seen that have worked, that have been successful, how can we take that, put it into Norfolk, put it into Wales, so that everybody starts to lift the level of it and benefit? And I think that would be a fantastic opportunity, a really exciting project to be involved in. And it'll start to address the connectivity challenges that we've got in Dorset. I mean, the lower frequency that's used by the mobile operators for 5G at 700 megs actually has better coverage than 3G and 4G. So you wouldn't need, people talk in terms of 5G that you need many more base stations. And I think, like many things, the devil is in the detail. If you're using very high frequency, that's true, but in rural, it doesn't have to be.
And I know we're starting to look at what infrastructure the council may have that we can use to build up that network, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so many little parts to our project. There is a part of our project called the Asset Hub that's looking at, the challenges you face when you're trying to build infrastructure in rural areas are around a number of things. It's around the provision of power. It's around what we call backhaul. So getting your mobile phone signal to the mast is part of the challenge. It then has to get back into the core network to the mobile operator. And then, of course, planning consent. People want connectivity, but they don't necessarily want a mobile phone mast in their back garden. So we need to reuse assets we've already got. And when I say assets we've already got, I mean the royal we, not just the council, but other agencies. So that might be hospitals, GP clinics, everything in MOD property. All of that needs to be available, information about those assets. Have they got power? What's the height? We're working with a company who's a partner who's got a product called the Asset Hub to help to make that information available, to reduce the costs when you're rolling out infrastructure.
And I guess it's that reliable infrastructure that we would need to do some of the things that we touched on earlier about litter-free, understanding who's on the beaches at what time, and promoting that kind of element of tourism to help people make informed decisions about where to go and what to do, and empty the bins on time.
Absolutely. So the connectivity is the key for me. You can do wonderful things, but of course, as soon as you lose connectivity, it's almost worse than not having any. When you become reliant on it and it stops working, as we all know, we've become, an example is SatNav. We've all become so reliant on SatNav when we're going anywhere. When it stops working, it's a nightmare.
Great. Any final thoughts from you, James, before we wrap up?
Just thank you ever so much for having me here today, and really great to get the chance to sort of have a really good panel discussion about where we see the benefits of 5G and of the work that's being carried out. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Gary. We're going to be picking up the theme of visitor experience this afternoon when I'm joined by some of my colleagues. We'll have more guests who are already using technology to provide our visitors with memorable experiences that we hope will keep people coming back to Dorset year after year. Thanks to all our guests this morning, to Jill, to Gary, to James for joining us. Thank you if you asked questions on Slido, and thank you to the audience and the Mayor at Lyme Regis for his contributions as well. If you've enjoyed the session, please let us know via Twitter using the hashtag FutureFest21 and follow us at Digital Dorset. Do come back this afternoon. Or tomorrow, where we'll be heading inland to the countryside of beautiful northern Dorset to look at the technology in agriculture to address climate change. We can now offer you that 10 minutes of beauty from Lulworth Cove we've been teasing you about, introduced by our ranger, Derek Billings, who's going to take you for a walk round the cliffs. You'll need to pop across in YouTube to the link that's in the chat, or search for Lulworth 360 Experience on our Digital Dorset YouTube channel. Before you go, can I thank you once again for your attention and time this morning. I hope to see you this afternoon, and goodbye from all of us here in very sunny Lyme Regis.